Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My name is Toshiaki Tachibanaki, visiting professor at Kyoto University. Thank you very much, Professor Heckman, for a wonderful presentation. I'm very honored to be able to comment. In Chicago School of Economics, when we think of that, the Chicago School, I think there are two characteristics to that. One is to trust the market mechanism, meaning that free market it is best for the economy if we follow market economics. That is one trend for Chicago School. And also the other is that human capital is very important. Human capital plays a very important role. I think that is the second characteristic. And today I was listening to Professor Heckman's presentation. I felt that because he is a professor at the University of Chicago, human capital investment, that tradition has been expressed. Especially what Professor Heckman wanted to say, I think, was the importance of early childhood investment. When we think of one's whole life, when the person is a very small child, what can be done? That is most important. Schooling and also training at the workplace. Even before that, preschool education, what kind of parenting should be provided is very, very important. And I believe that point was emphasized today. It was a tremendously good report. There was much to learn. 120 pages. I only have 10 minutes. So I would like to summarize my comment into 4. First of all, early childhood investment, when we think about that, the situation and status of parents, I think, is very important. I think Professor talked about divorce. So, of course, that I think you bear that in mind. About 50% of married couples divorce in the United States, we hear, and also the divorce rate is increasing here in Japan as well. And then divorced parents are single mothers. Children raised by single mothers or divorced parents do not have either the mother or father. So the amount of time that can be used for parenting will also be limited, because if both parents are there, they can afford to spend time on how to raise their children, and there will be sufficient income. So compared to that, children of single parents, because the mother's income may be limited, she will not be able to invest all that much in the children's education because she has to work really hard. That probably is reality. So from this point, I have a question. We are in a free society. People are free to divorce, people are free to marry. We have a lot of freedom, and Chicago School emphasizes market mechanism. So freedom is very important. Same thing for divorce. Then, early childhood investment. The parents who make such investment, if the parent is a single parent, there will be various issues. And this was mentioned in the professor's presentation as well. Then, in that case, who should be taking care of such children is what I want to ask. Family environment was mentioned, so maybe the neighbors can take care of such children. That may be the case, but from a broader perspective, the government should also play a role in educating children of single parents and divorced parents. So this is my first question. That is about the role of the government. And my second question, I think many of you are familiar with this. The myth for children under 3. This discussion has been ongoing for a very long time. What this means is that the life of a person is determined by how they are raised until the age of 3. So I think this is very similar to what Professor Heckman has been saying. However, in this day and age, women strongly want to work. So people who say that their wives should not work until their children reach the age of 3. But that is one line of thinking. However, the other is that the educational level of women is increasing, and it's very important for women to enter into the workforce. So this myth for children under 3 no longer exists, some people say. So mothers, even if they have children under the age of 3, they should still work. So I think there are two ways of looking at this. And maybe this is the situation in the United States as well. So the myth that mothers should stay at home with their children until their children reach the age of 3. Professor Heckman, do you support this line of thinking or not? This is my second question. And the third point. Concerning the education of small children, where can it be done? So of course the answer may differ depending on how you define small children, kindergartners or lower elementary school grades. In that case, there are some unique phenomena in Japan, which is outside school education outside of the formal school. This is a major characteristic we can see here in Japan, and there are 3 examples here. One is what is called gakushujuku. This does not exist outside of Japan, so it's very difficult to translate into English. Gakushujuku is outside of the formal school to study further in the gakushujuku from about 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening after school. So this is very important. And the second would be sports clubs or cultural skills, like entering into baseball team or play soccer or take piano lessons or learn to paint. So there is what we call outside school education. However, if you look at statistics, as is written here, depending on the parents' income level, there is a huge difference in how much outside schooling education opportunities are available. So if you can see, if the family income is less than 4 million, 8,700 yen per month is being expensed, and if the family income exceeds 8 million, then 26,700, meaning with family income will have a major role in determining whether the children can have outside schooling opportunities. So this may be a unique system in Japan, but how do we perceive this? I'd be very interested in hearing Professor Heckman's views. And also one more point is that gakushujuku is exclusively concentrating on providing education to go into prestigious schools going forward. So low-income children cannot go to juku, which may not lead to these children being able to go to prestigious schools going forward. So I would be very interested in knowing your views on that. That was my third question. And the fourth question, or my last question, now concerning early childhood education. Outside of the family, who will be providing education? It should be the government or the public sector. But as you may be aware, in Japan, the ratio of public expenditure for education is amongst the lowest amongst the OECD countries. Because the prevalent thinking here in Japan is that the family should be investing for education, not the government. Even the rate is even lower than in the U.S. So I would think the stance here in Japan is that it is not the government but the families that are responsible for children's education. So if we leave it as it is, maybe early childhood education may no longer be successful. So how can we persuade the government to increase public expenditure for education? I would be very interested in hearing your views. Of course, even if I make a fuss, the Japanese government is not going to do anything about it. So if someone prestigious from outside of Japan proposes this, then the Japanese government may take action. Sorry for going overboard on my time. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. If you have any questions and if you wish to write on the paper, please hand it to the staff with a box in the hall. Inviting visiting researcher and Rolf Lewis, sociology professor of Chicago University, comment by Professor Kazuo Yamaguchi. Thank you for the introduction. Professor Heckman's speech included some key points. First of all is the non-cognitive skill, which is malleable on a longer-term basis. And second is the importance of preschool investment in terms of cost-benefit. As the age rises, the investment return declines. As a result, in order to deal with poverty rather than redistribution, it should be pre-distribution. The next point is about high-quality parenting is important. There are some questions or comments. First, non-cognitive skills. What type of non-cognitive skills are important? I would like to clarify. In the papers by Professor Heckman, it talks about perseverance, attention, motivation, self-confidence. He spoke about the big five, the so-called ocean indicators: openness to experience, conscientiousness, very serious, hardworking, extraversion, agreeableness, emotional stability. However, what is the universality of productive non-cognitive skills? It could vary depending on the job. Between the white-collar and the blue-collar workers, the productive non-cognitive skill, same or different? According to Professor Otake, agreeableness would be positive, but not in the U.S. And extroversion is important in the USA, but not in Japan. It could depend on the different culture or countries. Related to that, the non-cognitive skill, it is nurtured because of the Santan model. How long-lasting could that be? One possibility is non-cognitive skills could be created by environment, according to sociology. Alex Inkel's Making Men Modern says openness to experience out of the big five that emerge as a result of work experience in modern bureaucratic work settings, or intellectual flexibility develops for professionals. And An Economist by Robert Frank, a theory on passion within reason. This is like an evolutional perspective. The honesty or commitment orientation emerge because they can be evolutionary rational, that it would be beneficial for their survival, according to Robert Frank. However, the issue is personality traits that may not be necessarily economically productive personalities in Japan. According to Tamotsu Sengoku, Institute of Youth Research in Japan, wrote Collapse of Conscientiousness, commitment, conscientiousness, diligence, social success. These values were lost amongst the youth in the 20 years between 1970 to 90. And the aspect that is given importance is to be humorous and entertaining, to be fun and funny is now important. According to Hakuhodo Research Institute, Nakamura Kyoko Yohei Harada has authored a book titled Everything for Teenagers. The most disliked youth is those who cannot read the atmosphere, those who cannot conform to the environment or the feeling. But in the case of innovations, that is created by breaking away from the existing knowledge. What about an environment that does not allow innovators to develop? The development of youth culture depends on popularity. There must be a popularity amongst the youth, but then that may not be economically productive personalities. Socially rewarding personalities are not likely to be economically productive. Then how could the society change so that socially rewarding personalities could also be economically productive personalities? Investment into preschool human capital, the non-cognitive skill. A selective or universal model which, for all the preschoolers, should there be human capital investment or targeted intervention? According to Professor Heckman, there is Head Start and the preschool. Those targeted poor families or black children, those were targeted interventions. But then ECEC in Finland, Early Childhood Education and Care. It's a combination of care and education. And educare is the concept in Finland. Combination of care and education, and neuvola in the Finn language. This is to offer advices about parenting. Neuvola is about consulting. In this case, this targets all the families and all children. So these are universal policies, which means they are costly because it is not targeted. But then there are targeted programs. Whether the targeting is fair or correct, the cost could be smaller for selection, but there could be an issue, as Professor Tachibanaki mentioned, in the case of Japan. Families are believed that it is the best place to cultivate child, and there is a strong belief, the myth of children up to 3 years old, that mothers should stay at home. But there are rising child abuses. And despite the rise of child abuses, there are conservative views that mothers should stay at home. Regarding the myth of 3 years old, in the US there are critical evidences. One of that is by Wrigley and Dreby's study, published in American Sociological Review 2005. This is looking at the mortality. The mortality is lowest at daycare centers, and the mortality is higher by 16 times for children who are cared at home. Babysitters at family daycare providers, the mortality is 7 times higher, which means that the family home is not exactly the safest place for infants. Professor Heckman also spoke about this. This is the vocabulary of the children, lexical ability. It is proportional to how much the adults, not only the parents, but the adults around them, talk to them. Family environment are not all homogeneous. If the parents have less vocabulary, it will be handicap for children. In that case, a high-quality daycare center might be better than a family with less lexical capability parents. In Japan, there are further challenges. A family background or environment, this is sometimes a handicap if children stay at home, according to studies in Japan. As was mentioned by Professor Akahabayashi, the math and Japanese language achievement is strongly correlated with the family income. Also, according to Professor Abe, according to Emi Kataoka per Bourdieu in France, is the idea of cultural equity. woman or the mother's educational background is strongly correlated with cultural capital, not the father's. If the mother's cultural capital is higher, then children's skill would be higher, which means they would be handicapped if the mother's educational level is low. According to Karia of Oxford University, he talks about pressure-free education has failed in Japan. In the schools, learning hours were reduced. As a result, for the working class children, study hours declined. But for the middle classes, there was cram school, juku hours that increased, and therefore there was no change in the study hours for the children. And therefore the disparity between the classes increased, according to Professor Karia of Oxford. He talked about incentive divide. According to Karia, the family environment, in particular, whether it's a middle class or labor class, working class, the motivation of both the parent and the child are different, which causes the disparity. Within the family environment, these are some of the reasons, according to Karia. A parent's income does have an impact, and the cultural capital of mother has an impact on two children, and then there's an incentive, motivation difference. The reason of these handicaps are numerous. Therefore, in order to target, what should be the target? Should be on the poor children or mothers without university education? It is extremely difficult to determine how to target. On the other hand, non-targeted Finnish type of program, there will be no problem of selection. This is about the poverty and the education achievement correlationship. A single parent household, one-parent household. In Japan, the poverty rate is 59%, highest among the OECD member countries. In the case of one-parent household, it is normally only the mother, and the mother does not have a regular job. Why? Because in Japan, indeed, wage disparity is different between the gender and big difference between regular and non-regular because of the whole life employment system. The midterm career will all become non-regular. All these are compounding. What to do? Summary. Professor Heckman's theory and research results are critically important, deeply insightful, in particular for the preschoolers. To give equal education opportunity, it would mean higher equity in social outcome. This applies in Japan as well, because disparity is caused by difference in the family environment, caused by multiple factors. However, there are deep-rooted disparity in the society, extremely difficult to remove these deep-rooted notions. In the case of Japan, in comparison to the United States, there are few evidence-based policies for human development. There is a need to catch up here in Japan. The largest implication is there must be evidence-based policies in order to increase effective policies. Thank you very much.